I had to make sure, and this is why I told her, I said, we got to stay away from each other. We got to just take 30 days. I wanted to make sure her heart was neutral, my heart was neutral, that we weren't clouded in our judgment. Every day in that 30 days, I felt more drawn to her and more of a peace. And I thought, wow, this is really the one God chose for me.
Welcome to the Dear Future Husband podcast, where I get to bring on my husband's father, John Bevere. Thanks for joining the show.
Christian, I am so honored to be on this program with you, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
You probably don't do a lot of solely relationship podcasts, so thank you for lending your heart and wisdom.
I hope your viewers enjoy what I have to say, but I'm trusting God that we're going to have just a great conversation today.
Oh, we will. And they actually asked for you to come on, so I know that they'll enjoy it. And they submitted questions that, we're going to start with, but please.
And guys, I haven't even seen these questions, so this is going to be really interesting.
Raw
this
and
is
real.
Off the cuff, raw, okay?
Okay, well, we're just going to start swinging. We're going to come out with a big question that I'm sure you've probably been asked before, but when it comes to choosing a spouse, is that something that you believe is God-led, or that leans into free choice?
I think it's both, honestly, Christian. I think God gives us a free choice. I would hate for my children to not have free choice. However, if my children are wise, they're going to listen to my input. Mm-hmm. And so as a wise child, I want God's input. My story is really unique. And of course, I've grown. I've been married to Lisa now 42 years. And I was a very much of a baby believer when this whole process started. I got saved, and dating was a hobby. I like to say that. And I remember I was going out periodically with this one girl that was not a believer. And after I gave my life to Jesus, I saw really quick it didn't work dating an unbeliever. So I thought, I'm done with that. Then I dated two other Christian girls, and both wanted to get married. And I thought, this doesn't work, because I didn't feel right. As a matter of fact, I almost felt trapped. I said, well, she's a nice Christian. All the people in the small church in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we were, thought we were the perfect match. And I actually was like feeling trapped. And one day I realized God said, no, she's not your wife. You don't have to marry her because you love me. So that's all that immaturity. So I remember at that point, I thought this just seems to be a distraction. So I was reading where in Genesis where God brought Eve to Adam and presented her to him. And I'll never forget, I said, God, I'm going to wait until you bring my wife to me and present her to me. And I didn't realize it, but I went over 2 years and didn't go out with a single girl. I had sorority girls. I was, I remember this Pi Phi. Pi Phi was our best sorority at Purdue's campus. And she called and said, hey, my roommate really wants to go to our pledge dance with you, and she's a Christian. Would you go with her? And I said, can I just pray about it? And I went, I'll never forget this, Christian. I prayed, and God said, you can go with her if you want, but if you want my will, don't. So there's your free choice, right? And I called her. I remember calling her and saying, no, I'm not going to go. And she was like, John, she's a Christian. And I said, yeah, I know, but I just don't want to do it. Yeah. And, here God brings to me one day the wildest girl on Purdue's campus. And that is not out of my mouth. I know if Lisa was sitting here right now, she would contest it to the hilt. But it's true. In the cafeteria on a lunch one day, she had on the shortest jeans, cutoff shorts ever, and a one-top bathing suit. That's how she was at lunch that day. And I'll never forget, I prayed. I said, God, that is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my entire life. Please let my wife look like her. And little did I know. I mean, I saw her the next day at breakfast, and she was with one of my friends, and I said, who's this? And all Lisa talked about was getting drunk, drinking 16 beers, driving her car into a ditch, dating this rugby player from New Zealand, a professional baseball player. And I just thought to myself, she's in another world. So I lost interest. But then she thought her mom was in a cult. She came up to me that one day and said, somebody told me I needed to talk to you because I led an all-campus Bible study. And she said, I think my mom's in a cult. And I said, oh, really? And she started telling me about her mom. And I thought, her mom's just saved. She's just a Christian. And she's not in a cult. And so that's how it happened. And I remember I asked Lisa to our Bible study picnic and led her to the Lord on a first date, and the rest is history. So I do believe I had a free choice. Mm-hmm. But as a person with a free choice, here's what I said, Christian. I said, God, I'm too stupid to pick out my wife. I said, I don't know that she's not going to go crazy in 10 years. I don't know that she's not going to, be unfaithful to me in 10 years. But you do, because you know the end from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking my free choice that you've given me, and I'm giving it back to you. So that's in essence what I did, Christian. And it's the smartest thing I think I did as a 20-year-old, because think about it. You're choosing the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And you're probably the unwisest you'll ever be the rest of your life, because hopefully you get wiser and wiser, right? And so I was at least smart enough to realize I would probably choose the wrong girl. And it was actually, my mother later on said, it was her greatest fear. She said, I was drawn to, the wrong types of girls. Mm-hmm. And she was very concerned about that. And, she said to me 8 years after we were married, she was like, you like married the best person for you. Mm-hmm. And she is. Lisa's such a good person for me to be married with, because I have weaknesses, and she covers those weaknesses so beautifully.
Okay, we got to go back to that, though. Your mom thought you were dating or picking the wrong girls.
Yeah.
And then you said no to Christian women that came highly esteemed, but then you had peace at dating the wild girl, granted after she had come to Bible study. Was that a tension point in your mind of like, am I backtracking? How did you know?
That's such a good question. So when I felt to ask her out, I felt like the Lord was prompting me. So she got saved at 1:30 in the morning. So I took her to our Bible study picnic, and oh my gosh, the girls were so upset. And I didn't know, Christian, I didn't have a clue. Mm-hmm. Because here's all these godly girls, and like one of them walked up to me at the Bible study picnic and said, do you know that she like does this and this and this? And I'm like, yeah, I know. Because I could tell all of a sudden, all right, she's not happy. I'm out with her. But at midnight, the Bible study picnic, we had food, we had singing, worship, and a message. And I'm driving back to the dorm at midnight, and I said, I hadn't been out with anybody in over 2.5 years. I said, what do you want to do? And all she knew to do is go to a bar, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, let's just go walk on the campus. And at 1:30 in the morning, she got saved. And honestly, in my mind, I thought, I'm done. That was why God had me take her out, was to lead her to Jesus. And because I'm moving to Dallas in 3 weeks, and my wife's probably in Dallas. She's probably a pastor's daughter, because I have this world call on my life, right? Stupid me. And I remember, I thought, after the next day, I thought, I still feel drawn to her. And I prayed, and I said, God, what do I do? And I felt this amazing peace. And I was so used to the Lord going, no, or giving me a check. And I felt this amazing peace, and I thought, okay, it's okay that I go out with her again. So it just, every time I'd go out with her, I just felt more of a peace. So then, this is just me. I was so wanting to make sure I married the right girl. When I realized, gosh, there's something there, I said, we're gonna pray every day for 30 minutes separately. And if you feel one check about me, I want you to tell me. If I feel one check about you, I'll tell you. This is so silly. And yet God honored it.
Yeah.
Every day in that 30 days, I felt more drawn to her and more of a peace. And I thought, wow, this is really the one God chose for me. Mm-hmm. So there's free will and there's God's will. And I believe when we say, Lord, I, out of my free will submit to your choice, I think it's the wisest thing we can do, Christian.
I think so too. And part of that equation that I think we don't often bring into that is, the relationship with God. Like, I'm hearing you say so much that you asked God and he gave you direction, or he spoke to you, he gave you peace. Because to me, free will and God's will sounds black and white. It's a yes or it's a no. But I think your healthy fear and your communication with God helped you discern. Something that a lot of women are saying of today is that men are immature, or we're also feeling space, that's what's leading us.
Yep.
And so I think some people could find themselves in a similar situation, but maybe get stuck with the wrong person because, well, it wasn't peace that was leading me. It was my emotion or my hormones or my attraction to them. But you were able to think those could have really been playing into y'all's relationship, but you kept that healthy fear. We had something similar. I don't know if you know this part of our story, but whenever Arden first reached out to me, I threw my phone in the back of the car because I had that same revelation. I was like, God, I don't trust myself to pick out who I'm supposed to be with. And I was like, and you know this, so I will only go out with him if he is my husband. And that can seem kind of extreme or religious, some of these stories we're sharing, but I think that healthy fear really sets people apart. Of like, well, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. Do you think people are doing that today, or why are Christians single struggling today?
I think
more?
You're a lot more in touch of what people are doing today than I am. I will say that I think sometimes we can be just a little bit too extreme, and other times we're too loose. I see it as everything needs to align up. Okay, so I would say, as Josh McDowell says, the physical is 1/12, but boy, what a 1/12. So a lot of people are like, well, suppose God has me marry somebody I really don't like. I don't buy that. So that's the real religious side. When I look at Psalm 34, I look at delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. I look at that as God will place his desires in you so that now what you desire is actually, he gives it to you. And I would say that what you should concentrate more on is delighting in the Lord. And as you said, that healthy fear, like, God, I know you know what's best. What I find that young people do is they give their heart to somebody and then they ask God. So I knew better. I knew that if I go over the top with her before I ask God, she's so beautiful, she's so attractive in her personality, I know I won't be able to hear from God. So I really guarded my heart. I believe there's a reason the Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it flow the forces of life. I knew, Christian, if I give my heart to her fully and God says no, I don't think I'll be able to hear the no. If you look at Ezekiel chapters 13 and 14, there's some really powerful things that are revealed in these two chapters. But God says, if you have an idol in your heart, and what's interesting in the Old Testament, idols were always under trees. They were always on hills. They were always in temples. But this is the only place I can find in the Old Testament where it says if somebody has an idol in their heart. So an idol is anything you love, like, or trust more than you love, like, or trust Jesus. So if I come to God and I inquire of him with an idol in my heart, God says in Ezekiel 14, verse 9, I'll answer you according to that idol. I'm like, whoa. And what I interpret that for today, to make it practical, because, scripture sometimes needs to be made practical, right? We're sitting there going, I don't understand this, what might have been clear to Ezekiel and his people. How does it apply here in the 21st century, right? The way I see it is, when I go to God, I have to have my heart in a neutral place. That if he says no, I'm like, good with it. If he says yes, I'm good with it. So if my heart isn't in that neutral place, now all of a sudden I've got something that possibly is competing in attention with God. So I had to make sure, and this is why I told her, I said, we got to stay away from each other. We got to just take 30 days. I wanted to make sure her heart was neutral, my heart was neutral, that we weren't clouded in our judgment. So what I would say to all your many, many wonderful friends that are on your podcast, please make sure you don't open up your heart and give your heart to somebody and then go to God saying, God, is this a good idea? Not a wise move. Yeah. Because now you got to get healed. You've opened your heart, right? So I love what you did. It's my own son, and I love that you did that.
Well, yeah, it was, I think I would have turned out okay because he was so awesome, and he is so amazing. But it was a marking point in how I trusted God and how I saw my relationships unfold. And I'm so thankful for that. And I'm thankful that he does speak in our relationships because they're so important. They're one of the biggest decisions we'll ever make.
Sure.
And you have 4 sons. How did you go from, okay, God, I trust you to bring me the one, to I trust you to bring 4 women for these boys? Was that?
Boy, did I pray.
I can't imagine.
I kept praying. I said, God, please, above all, give my sons girls that fear God and that love my sons, but they love Jesus more than they love my sons. Because I know how unhealthy it is when a girl loves a guy or a guy loves a girl more than they love Jesus. Mm-hmm. I believe when you love Jesus more than your spouse, it gives you the ability to love your spouse in a better way than you ever could have loved them. When you make an idol out of your spouse, that means I love my spouse more than I love Jesus. You will not be able to love your spouse as much because you will not have that capacity to give. And so it's like Jesus said, when you seek to save your life, you lose it. When you lose it, you find it. Mm-hmm. And so the big thing I prayed, Christian, was I said, I want these girls to love God more than they love my boys. And I prayed that these girls, I prayed, give them wise girls. And I prayed, give them beautiful girls. I wanted my sons to marry beautiful women. And I look at all 4 of our daughter-in-laws and I'm just shaking my head. I mean, Lisa constantly says to me, she said, we have 4 of the most beautiful girls on planet Earth that our sons got to marry. And I prayed that for years. And I prayed that your personalities would mesh. There would be chemistry. There would be a deep love for each other, a desire to build a family. Mm-hmm. That was so important to me. And I feel like, wow, God, you did it. I mean, I think about it a lot. I look back and I think all those times I prayed early in the morning for those boys to marry the right girls. And I look at the girls they got and I'm like, each of you are so perfect for our sons.
Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you for covering our marriages too, because it's not even what you wanted for your sons, but what you knew God could do in their relationship. So I feel like we're benefiting from those prayers, and thank you.
Well, legacy is huge.
It is.
I mean, you and Arden want to see your children have children that love God and are fruitful in this earth, right? Our number one desire is to see you guys fruitful, even more fruitful than Lisa and I have been, in the areas that God has called you to, right? Not in what he's called us to, in what he's called you to. Now, what's amazing is here you, as a couple, have felt drawn to be with us at Messenger in this season. Maybe the rest of your life. I don't even want to go there. But what I love is the fact that God's put that in your heart. He put that in our heart. And we love serving with you. Mm-hmm. So it's a real joy for us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel like we've broken all of the stigmas I thought around in-laws. I was like, it's going to be terrible. You're constantly fighting. But it's been such a joy to
I just have to be careful that I don't come over too much.
Well, I called you over today, so I think we like having you here. But one thing people do say is that relationship, when it comes time to the 2 to become one, the son or daughter to leave the household, is sometimes there's tension with the parents in the choice, whether that's they're knowingly dating the wrong person, so they're scared to bring around the family, or a parent's too controlling. I feel like you guys, not in any bad way, but said yes or gave blessing quicker than I thought. And I think that's because you trusted your boys and y'all had great communication.
We did.
But probably more to the parent, but what's your advice to advising in that area, especially when it comes to the person they want to be with?
When I look at the Bible, now this I got to be really careful with this. When it says a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, he's leaving the authority of his father and mother, and he establishes a new authority. Mm-hmm. Like, that we've told you. I have friends at JH Ranch, and this is the way they describe the advancement of a child. You start out as a caretaker, then you go to cop, then you go to coach, and then you go to consultant. Mm. Your coach can give advice without being asked. A consultant cannot give advice unless they're asked. The day you get married, you go to consultant. The day your son or daughter gets married, that's when me as a parent, I go to consultant. So I told all of our sons, the last blessing God tells me to give you, the last thing you should obey me in as a godly dad, a godly mother, is our choice for your wife, right? That's the last thing. Then once that's done, a new authority is established. I recognize that as a single man. Now, here's the part of the story I didn't tell you. At first, my mom and dad weren't in favor of me marrying Lisa. And I went back to them after a couple weeks and I said, I really feel strongly about this. And my dad and mom said, you do? I said, yeah, I do. I said, but I'm going to listen to you. So I need you to tell me, wow. Will you give me the blessing or, and my dad said, if you feel strongly about it, I trust you, you go ahead. Well, it was 8 years later that my mom said, man, you really married the right girl. So my hope was that I had trained our sons to the point where they could make a good decision. Now, I will say this, and this is something that's not well known. One of our sons was drawn to a girl that Lisa felt very uncomfortable with, and he listened to her. And that was a tough breakup for him. But if you were to speak to him today, he'd say, Mom, I'm so glad you spoke up.
Yeah.
So there was a mutual respect between our sons and us. They wanted to hear our input, but we respected them and knew that they could choose wisely. And the only time we ever spoke up was with that one son who we felt this is not good. And it proved out true later. So as a parent, I want to see my role as being a protective role, that you probably don't need it because I've had 23 years to raise you, but I want to be that extra voice that will bring assurance to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like when Arden told Lisa and I mean, he knew after your first date, I'll be honest with you. He said, I think she's the one. And I'm like, wow, that's fast. Yeah. And yet I'm sitting here laughing because Lisa knew the next day I was going to be her husband, and I knew within 2 weeks. So I'm like, I'm not surprised because, you know, girls and guys, let me tell you something. You're so used to hearing this, feeling this check inside, that all of a sudden the right one comes and it's the first time you feel this release inside. It's pretty easy to spot. And that's what I often tell young people. I say, hey, don't worry about it. When the one that, if you've given that choice to God and say, God, I want you to pick, when the right one comes along, you won't even need to ask me about it. You won't even need to ask your friends. You'll know. But
I love that you say that as a prerequisite. If you've given that choice to God, then you'll be able to determine, am I striving this along? Is this peace-led? And I think that's, we tell people, when you know, but it has to be, are you checking your knowing? Are you checking your emotions, your peace, all of that with God?
Yes.
One thing I do get asked a lot of women that are still struggling with the do I know or not is, well, what does the right man, what does him leading look like? How do I know if he's someone that will lead me well based off his first actions, his character?
You're going to see a really good side of any guy when you're dating. So what you want to look for are the little things that maybe I'm not under the spotlight. How's he treating the waitress? How's he treating the person at the airport, at the ticket counter? How's he treating his teacher? How does he talk about his siblings? How does he talk about his parents? How does he talk about somebody that has not treated him very well? How does he process it? Is he quick to forgive? These are important things. So when you're with the gorgeous princess and the night is right, you're going to see controlled behavior.
Yeah.
I'm saying when you really need to take note is the uncontrolled times. The times that maybe you're in a sweatsuit. The times when, you know, like I said, how is he handling that person that brought the food to the table? These are all good indicators. And most of all, how does he handle a difficult time? And does he say, I'm sorry? These are all things you want to look for. Okay. And if he doesn't know how to really own something, if you don't see genuine humility in him, if you don't see really godly fear in him, be careful.
Yeah, because everyone has their good moments and their bad moments. And so I think the question we really want to ask is, well, what does their consistency look like? And I haven't fully fleshed this out yet, but I have kind of this theory of God, as you were saying with you and Lisa, aligns you with someone that's going to strengthen you in your weaknesses or almost balance you out in a way, not complete you, but strengthen you. So do you think there's a way of, well, someone does show, hey, I struggle in this area. I still believe God. I still answer to him. I don't go off the deep end, but this is where I struggle sometimes, or this isn't my strength. Do you think we could even look for the way that we sharpen one another in that? Because I say Arden and I are like-minded in a lot of things, but his strengths aren't my strengths and my strengths aren't his strengths. So do you think there's a pairing element?
Yeah, and I think the faster you recognize it, the better off you're going to be. There are definite strengths in Lisa that I don't have. There are definite strengths in me Lisa doesn't have. And I believe God does that. When you say, God, I want the one you've chosen for me, he'll bring somebody that's going to round out your weaknesses and strength, bring them up. And so that could be a place of contention, or it could be a place of learning humility, of recognizing when I need to back down and when I need to speak up. And Lisa and I, it took us a long time to learn this. At first, when we were dating, we were like, we don't disagree on anything. We were thinking on the marriage counseling, oh, we don't need to listen to this. The only thing we disagree on is salad dressing, right? And yet, wow.
The rapture. So many things.
Yeah. So anyway, I started realizing, okay, there are things we disagree on. And I had to recognize, when is this God speaking through her to try to help me? And when is this fear speaking in her? And I need to say, we're going to do this. Yeah. And I had to be really careful, because if it was God speaking through her to me and I overrode it, we paid for it. We both paid for it, right? And so I've learned to recognize what are her strengths, and she's learned to recognize my strengths. And that's 42 years of marriage. Yeah. But there are still times when she has to override, saying, honey, you're a little offended with this person, and that's why you're acting like this right now. And at that point, I have to go, you're right. I don't like it, but I'm like, okay, you're right. But then there's times that I have to go, no, babe, this is a faith matter, and I really believe that God wants us to do this. And she'll go, okay. So we kind of learn, Yeah. And that's the fun of a union. It's a divine merger. I mean, our spirits are instantly made one, right? Where we consummate the marriage, and physically we become one, but the soul part, it's a divine merger of two different personalities. And women are different than men. Yeah. And we have to understand that that's for a reason, right? So I remember when it came to discipline with our children, Lisa, would see it one way and I'd see it another way. We're either wrong. Actually, they were both right. And I had to finally say to her, and she had to say to me, we had to look at each other and say, I'm raising men, and I know the way a man needs to be treated in this area. And Lisa, you need to trust me on this one. And it's like we had conversations. Well, let's buy our kids a car when they become 16 and all of that. And I said, no way. I said, are you kidding? I'll match what they put into a car up to $5,000. I said, let's do it that. She was like, huh? I said, yeah, I'm not going to create entitlement. I want them to work for this. And Mama's heart says, I want my children to have everything. Dad says, you're going to work for this, right? So she recognized, okay, this is a man's strength, and I need to realize my nurturing mama heart wants to give them anything they want. So you learn, and there's no formula. You just constantly have to walk it out every single day, going, okay, what is this that I'm being stubborn in? Or what is this that I need to be a leader in as a man? And as a woman, you need to go, I need to listen to him on this. Or, you know what? He needs my advice on this. He needs to hear my heart on this. I share this in our marriage book, but I had the pressure of being the macho guy that made all the decisions. So I'm making all these decisions, and I'm not listening to Lisa's counsel. And all these decisions I'm making, they were bad decisions. And I was out praying one day and I said, God, I don't get this. I just don't get it. You tell me to be a leader of the house, but yet I'm making decisions and half of them are turning out bad. And the advice she gave me was better. And the Lord said, I'll never forget this. He said, draw a circle on a piece of paper. And I drew a circle. He said, put X's all the way into that circle. And I put X's. He said, now draw a line right down the middle. I drew a line right down the middle. He said, when you were single, you were complete as yourself. He said, but when you got married, you're not complete in yourself. You're one with her. Mm. He said, you're one side of the circle. She's the other side. Do you notice the X's are in both sides? And I said, yeah. And he said, those X's are wisdom that you need from me to make a good decision. He said, the problem is you're trying to make all your decisions with just half the X's. Hmm. He said, if you are a wise leader of your home, you will learn how to draw out of her without making her feel intimidated, what her heart is on the matter, and then weigh it out and make a right decision. And I started doing that. And sure enough, things started turning out so much better.
But I think that's beautiful. And I love that you show that leadership isn't dominating, but it's stewarding. And oftentimes it's navigating both. It's not just you by yourself as the man of like stone cold, but it's how do I serve my wife well and make decisions for us. So
right.
Thank you for bringing clarity to
Absolutely.
that.
And I would say it's as a man, you always have to remember you want to make the decision based on what's best for the wife and the children. So Jesus washing the disciples' feet was in essence him saying, I'm the number one servant. Mm-hmm. Right? So he said, I am here as one who serves. So the man being the head of the house, he really is the number one servant in the house. So it kind of changes perspective. I mean, the way the world teaches men is, oh, you're the dominating leader in the family. You're the guy that makes the decisions. Whatever you say goes. But when you got a husband who understands the principles of the kingdom and he goes, I'm the last person that should be benefited here in my decision making. Mm-hmm. It should be my wife first and it should be my children second. And I should be third. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to make good decisions.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you for coming on as not only a father-in-law, but as a guest speaking wisdom into our listeners. And if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll come back for more. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of the Dear Future Husband podcast.